Hi, and thank you for joining me for another short lecture. And friends, today I wanted to quickly speak to you about the statement that appears twice in Perkei Avot of Aseh Lecha, usually translated that one should make for himself a rabbi. And you're probably thinking that the inyan of making for yourself a rav seems pretty plain and straightforward, and what could I possibly have to teach you regarding this concept? Well, actually, Aseh Lecha has had a lot more influence in the Orthodox world than perhaps you may have thought. An influence that unfortunately has not always been positive. And I would go as far as to say that in many instances, by incorrectly understanding the inyan of Aseh Lecha, it has really left Orthodox Judaism in a social standstill, literally. Mainly because although Aseh Lecha literally states that one should make for himself a rabbi or teacher, this has come to be understood that one should just make for himself only one rabbi and one teacher, of whom he should then inquire with regarding all issues of life, from how to dress, who to date, where to live, how to speak, medical advice, psychological counseling, and on and on. Now, alone, in its simple sense, the notion of making for yourself a rabbi sounds positive and encourageable. And friends, I couldn't agree more on the necessity that especially males have for mentorship. No, friends, the problem arises when the idea is used as a tool to completely control the student to the extent that it guarantees that he will never ethically or courageously surpass his teachers. An idea that, because of the ingrained notion of Yeridot Hadorot, doesn't seem to bother anyone in the Haredi world today. And friends, I don't have to tell you that not all rabbis agree with this unhealthy notion of Aseh Lecha. Like the late Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, who would cry to his daughters on how much time these constant interruptions would consume in his daily life, mainly because this is not what Aseh Lecha meant. Constant phone calls and meetings over stupid, minute issues. Should I travel? What name should I name my kids? On and on. In other words, the job of a Talmid Chacham was always only to learn and to teach Torah, and not answer the most minute questions in someone's life. And this, friends, please do not think that this is something that Jews have intentionally misunderstood on their own, but rather it has been the message pushed mainly by Ashkenazi rabbis whose main goal was to standardize religious Jewish life and thought, so that it should never advance past the 18th century. Groups like Agudas Yisrael that has gone as far as to materialize their interpretation of Aseh Lecha to a communal or even nationalistic level with the invention of Das Torah in 1919. The notion that the words of the rabbis or the Gedolim of our generation are not only infallible, but almost on the level of prophecy. And that the Rav that one chooses for himself should have some sort of connection to one of these Gedolim, so in some way to guarantee that their guidance is in some way celestially sanctioned. Which is why this is actually a phrase heard much in the yeshiva world, right? That if one's Rebbe has some sort of connection to Das Torah, almost limiting the rabbi that you're able to choose for yourself. So today, my friends, we're going to go back to the sources to see what does the statement of Aseh Lecha actually mean and what does it encompass, right? So the Mishnah in Perkei Avot, Perek Aleph Mishnah Vav states, Yeshua ben Prachya Omer, Aseh Lecha Ukne lecha chaver, v'chavei dan et kol chadam lechav zchut. To make for yourself a rav and to acquire for yourself a friend, and let it be that you always judge each person in a meritful manner. So like we said, today we're dealing with the first portion of this Mishnah. So first, contextually, Rav in Aseh Lecha does not necessarily mean a rabbi, but literally any skilled individual. Although we know that Rav, apart from meaning some sort of leader, was also the title given to men who held authentic smicha. Now one could not assume that this could possibly mean that someone had to acquire for himself an actual musmach, at least from the time back then. No, friends. Here, Rav, in this context, only meant a skilled individual in whatever manner one felt that it applied. Now, the Rambam in his parish to this Mishnah here states that this even applies to someone who is of lesser wisdom than yourself. In other words, not a teacher necessarily, not someone to darshan personal insights or any type of svara, but here, someone as he states, to just sharpen your skills with in order that you remember what you studied. Now try telling that to a Jew nowadays, that this is just someone to bounce your halacha off of, and not what is taught today, which is to create some sort of demigod to filter all of your actions through. Now, Aseh lecharav is actually not a halacha, but Musar. Actually, all of Mishnah Avot is Musar. It's ethics. In other words, it's just good advice, right? And necessarily, and for sure, I mean, not statements that we necessarily have to adhere to be considered kosher Jews. And friends, if you're still wondering, what is the big deal if we have a corrupted understanding of Aseh lecharav? Well, friends, don't worry. I'm confident that, well, at least if sources along with logical reasons is enough to sway your opinion, then towards the end of this lecture, I'm sure you'll be satisfied with what I deliver. And what logical reason is there to repair the current day understanding of the term of Aseh lecharav? Well, for one, this modern day notion of Aseh lecharav, it keeps men from maturing, which is precisely what happens when you keep men from making decisions. It also ensures that things will never improve. No, friends, the only thing that it does ensure is that things will just not get worse. And lastly, it removes the responsibility of dealing with the consequences for bad decisions. In other words, the notion that I cannot be blamed for this or that because I was just listening to my rabbi, because I acted through the guise of a proxy. In other words, because he told me to do it. And when you feel that this institution is sanctioned by the Creator, this ensures that you will always have a clean conscience about any of your actions, like a soldier just taking orders. Which is why Haredim don't feel that they have to apologize to a society for refusing to go to college, or having their wives support them, or having a family so large that they can't support financially this family themselves, which then forces them to put that family in welfare and force their neighbors to pay for their family, right? Because, again, he was just following the instructions of his rabbi. Like Syrian Jews who feel that they have to mistreat converts only because their rabbis before them did so. And the Talmud Yerushalmi is clear in Horayot, in the first parak, that even by listening to the Beit Din Hagadol blindly, that this does not even exempt someone from paying the consequences for acting irresponsibly, right? So much for Das Torah. Anyways, the next place we find the statement of Aseh lecharav is in the same parak, in the 16th Mishnah of Parkavot. It states, Rabban Gamliel Chaya Omer, Aseh lecharav, v'chiftalek min hasafek, v'al tarbele ased amadot. So it says that Rabbi Gamliel would say, make for yourself a rav, or I guess a master. Stay away from doubt and do not accustom yourself to tithe by estimation. So here, Rabbi Gamliel is telling us that one of the purposes of acquiring a rav is to free yourself from doubt. What does this mean? Well, here the Rambam clarifies further that this does not mean someone to teach you, but only someone to lay down pasach. In other words, someone who in the time of the Mishnah could just bring down the tradition and lay down Isser v'Heter. To the point that the Rambam here states that this means that one could even pick an educated man, a random educated man from the market, to fulfill this role of a rav. And we see that the Gemara elsewhere elucidates this idea. But we'll get to that in a second. But anyways, another great quote that just came to mind was one said by the great Rav Aaron Lichtenstein regarding the Haredi notion that Aseh lecharav means only make for yourself one rabbi. He states that Aseh lecharav means only make one rabbi, like Uknei lecha chaver means only make one friend. Basically stating that it's a ridiculous notion that one should only make for himself one rabbi, one teacher, right? But really, the most fascinating statement regarding this issue was made by the Meiri in his Parish to Mishlei. Here he states that if we don't have a Rav, that if one is not given to us, that what? That one must acquire one, Aseh lecharav. In other words, here he's telling us that Aseh lecharav means to just get a rabbi. Friends, what the Meiri is really telling us here is that we in the yeshiva world have been reading this Mishnah wrong all along. Right? And this really opens up many different understandings, especially the Rambam's and every other Makor that I will quote today. In other words, he's saying that this is not for frum people, but for the person who needs initial instructions. In other words, he's saying, want to be frum, want to keep Torah, your first step is Aseh lecharav. Shoot, just find yourself someone to teach you. So simple, Rabotai. Now, some people think because they're reading it and they already know Torah and they know Pesach, that this must mean something more, that it must mean to make a life coach or a full mentor. Oh, what, you're asking me if I could eat this hashgacha? Well, let me ask my rabbi, right? No way, at least not according to the Mary. Rather, if you want Torah, get a teacher. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. It doesn't matter. And anyways, friends, I think this is the clearest understanding of Aseh Lecha, right? Because what? Because this is the Pashat. At least for sure, it's a contextual understanding. I mean, just think of how Perkei Avot begins, right? Moshe kibel Torah miSinai umsara leYehoshua veYehoshua leZakenim uZakenim leNeviim, and on and on. And what? You want some of this? You want Torah? Aseh Lecha. Find someone to pass down the tradition to you. Not to extrapolate from this notion that one should make for himself a demigod. And friends, you should also in no way think that making for yourself a Rav or many teachers should in any way free one from using common sense. As the Gemara states in Bava Batra, Daf Kuv Samechet Amar Aleph, that when a Talmid Chacham desires to marry a woman, he shouldn't ask his Rebbe or bring with him another Talmid Chacham, but what? Bring with himself an Amar Aretz. In other words, take with him someone who's used to looking at women. In other words, friends, that there are things that not even Chachamim can help you with. In other words, you have to use the appropriate tools for the appropriate task. Common sense, my friends. So, if you have a business question, ask a businessman. If you have a medical question, find a doctor. Or if you need advice that has something to do with a girsa or an understanding of the sugya, then find yourself a rabbi. And friends, there is no other source that I think makes it clearer than the Gemara in Avodah Zarah Daf Yud Tet Amud Aleph that states, Rabbi Yani Omer, Ke'etz shetol velo ke'etz nata, Kol halomed Torah merav echad ein roeh siman baracha leolam. That Rabbi Yani states that whoever learns Torah from one Rav will never achieve great success. In some way, directly answering the first two statements in Perkei Avot. But no, friends, it gets better. Then Rav Chisda clears up the issue by telling us that this notion of learning from many Rabbeim is only regarding Sevorah, right? We see the students went to learn from more than one teacher. Why? Because they needed a logical understanding of what was being taught, or even logical interpretations to the actual girsa they were learning. Why? Because everyone has a different opinion in reasoning out the girsas in the Mishnah, so that one could get to their savara yishara, a clear understanding. And friends, this is not Savora as we have them today. Remember, this is Rav Chisda. I mean, he's in Amara. It's a different time. However, to know, friends, to know the actual text, to know them from scratch as they were spoken, to know them, you needed one Rav to transmit them to you, right? Remember, back then people learned the sources of oral law, what later became the Mishnah. They learned it orally, not like we have them today in written form. So this is what the Sugya here in Avodah Zarah and in the Mishnah and Navot is speaking about, right? The reasoning, i.e. everything that is done after the Divrei Sofrim. So this, friends, explains it all. That the notion of learning from just one Rav is the type of learning they did back then to actually learn the actual sources that had to be learned orally. You went to one man, to one teacher, but not Savora, which is pretty much any type of learning that's done today, right? Any type of learning, any type of extrapolating from any sort of text. This falls under Sfora, at least according to Rav Chisda, and according to Rav Chisda, this is what you require many rabbis to do. Okay? And friends, it cannot get any clearer than this. So, Aseh Lecha, what does it mean? Well, I think the Mary puts it best, but tying it into the statement of Rav Chisda, at least with the learning that's done nowadays, right? If you want to learn Torah, find a teacher to teach you, and that's it, and that's all. Whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, the more the better. For more information, friends, on everything Jewish, please visit bejewish.org. Thank you.